My daughter-in-law once looked straight into my eyes and said, "You will die poor and alone." Those words felt like a knife stabbing into my heart. But then when I quietly bought a $1.2 million villa in Naperville, my son walked in, smiled brightly, and said, "This is amazing, Mom. Sophia will love raising children here." I simply gave a gentle smile, then picked up my phone and made a single call. That call changed everything. My friends, if you have ever been looked down on by your own family, treated like a burden, would you stay silent and endure it? Or would you dare to stand up and reclaim your dignity? Let me tell you this true story. From beginning to end, my name is Lauren Smith. I am 68 years old. I live in a small but cozy rented apartment in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. 3 years ago, when Robert, my wonderful husband, passed away, I decided to sell the large house filled with memories and move here. Not because I lacked money, but because I wanted a simpler life. I wanted things to feel lighter, so the weight of missing him would not press down on me every single day. I drove an old car. I wore comfortable clothes. And I spent most of my time volunteering at a community center near my home. My life back then looked very ordinary, even a little struggling in the eyes of others. Then one autumn afternoon, an invitation card for Michael's birthday, my son, arrived. The card was made of thick cream paper, elegant and refined, the kind Sophia, my daughter-in-law, always insisted on using for every occasion. Her handwriting was perfect, graceful, and carefully curved. "Join us for a warm family gathering to celebrate Michael's 40th birthday." I held the card in my hands and felt a quiet tightness in my chest. I knew very well nothing Sophia organized was ever truly for family. But Michael is my son, the child I raised on my own after his father passed away, the greatest pride of my life. No matter what, I still wanted to be there. I spent the entire afternoon getting ready. I opened my closet and took out a deep navy dress, a gift Robert gave me on our 30th wedding anniversary. The small pearl buttons still shimmered, just like they did years ago, even though I had not worn it in a very long time. I stood in front of the mirror, gently touching the silk fabric, feeling as if Robert was somewhere smiling at me. Then I treated myself to a visit to a salon in downtown, something that, with my tight monthly budget, felt like a great luxury. Jenna, the hairstylist, trimmed my silver hair into a neat bob, making me look noticeably younger. When I walked out of the salon, I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, I am still here. I am still alive. And I still deserve to be valued. I drove to the restaurant, a luxurious place in downtown Chicago with dazzling crystal chandeliers, crisp white tablecloths, stiff enough to cut paper, and servers moving gracefully as if they were dancing. A dinner here could cost more than my entire monthly food budget. But I still came, because it was my son's birthday. I did not know that that evening would change everything. My daughter-in-law, Sophia, once looked straight into my eyes and said, "You will die poor and alone." Those words cut like a knife, but I stayed silent. Later, when I bought a $1.2 million villa on Willow Creek Lane, Naperville, a dream home that would make anyone admire it, Michael walked in, smiled brightly, and said, "This is amazing, Mom. Sophia will love raising children here." I simply smiled gently, then quietly picked up my phone and made a single call. That call changed everything. And today I want to tell you the whole story from beginning to end so you can understand this. Sometimes the greatest strength is not money or a big house, but the moment a woman decides that she deserves to live according to her true worth. If you are watching this video from any city in the United States, from New York to Los Angeles to small towns in the Midwest, leave a comment and tell me where you are. I would truly love to know how far this story has traveled and whether it has touched your heart. Let us begin. I walked into the restaurant with my heart beating faster than usual. This place was right in downtown Chicago, one of the most expensive locations in the city. Swarovski chandeliers sparkled from the high ceiling. The white tablecloths were so stiff they could cut paper. And every item on the menu made me mentally recalculate my monthly budget. A dinner here could cost up to $300 per person, but I still came. Because it was Michael's 40th birthday, my son, the one I had spent my entire life loving and sacrificing for. The hostess led me to a corner table where Michael and Sophia were already seated, along with two of Michael's colleagues, young lawyers, neatly dressed, laughing and chatting. Michael stood up and hugged me, but the hug was shorter, more rigid than I remembered. "Thank you for coming, Mom," he said, his voice polite but distant. Sophia sat beside him. Her blonde hair was styled in an elaborate updo. She wore a tight designer dress that shimmered under the lights. She smiled, a smile I knew well. Beautiful, perfect, but it never reached her eyes. "Lauren, you look presentable," she said, her voice sweet, almost artificial. That word presentable hung in the air like a soft but sharp slap. Not beautiful, not elegant, just presentable, as if I were an old object quickly polished and put on display. The evening began smoothly, at least on the surface. Michael talked about his promotion at a major law firm, about the important cases he was handling. His colleagues nodded, clapped, and praised him. Sophia joined in mentioning their upcoming trip to Tuscany, Italy. We booked a private villa with a vineyard view. Very romantic. I listened, nodded at the right moments, and tried to join the conversation when I could. But everything I said only made Sophia smile, that same smile. A how cute smile filled with quiet mockery. When the waiter brought the wine list, Sophia took it, glanced through it, and announced clearly, "We will have the Chateau Margaux 2015. That bottle cost nearly $800. I knew that well. Then she turned to me, her tone full of fake concern. "Oh, but maybe we should choose something cheaper. I know Lauren has been quite tight on money since moving into that small apartment." My cheeks burned. Michael's two colleagues glanced at each other, then looked at me, their eyes filled with curiosity and a hint of pity. I tried to keep my voice steady. The wine sounds lovely, but inside me humiliation was rising like a wave. Yes, I lived simply, but not because I was poor. I chose this life, to avoid judgmental eyes, to keep my freedom, to keep my peace. But Sophia did not stop. When I mentioned my volunteer work at the community center teaching children how to read and playing bingo with elderly people, Sophia laughed out loud. Her laughter echoed through the elegant space. "Oh, Lauren, that is adorable. Playing bingo with lonely old ladies just to pass the time. I bet you really enjoy that." Michael's colleagues laughed along, though a bit awkwardly. Michael said nothing. He just lowered his head, cutting his steak, avoiding my eyes. My chest tightened. But the worst was yet to come. When Sophia stood up to go to the restroom, I thought this was my chance to talk to Michael alone. Like before, when he was a child running into my arms after school, telling me everything. I gently reached out and touched his hand. "Michael, He pulled his hand back. "Mom, about your living situation," he said awkwardly. "Sophia and I have talked about it. We are worried about you living alone in that area. Maybe it is time you consider other options." "Other options," I repeated, my blood turning cold. "What do you mean?" Before Michael could answer, Sophia returned a satisfied smile on her lips. "Oh, good, you are already talking about Lauren's future. I just told Michael we are very concerned." She leaned forward, her voice sweet like syrup but full of thorns. "Lauren, you are not young anymore. Living alone, struggling financially, this cannot go on. There are some very nice assisted living facilities nearby. Clean, nurses available all day and night, plenty of community activities, and quite affordable for a retiree." The room seemed to spin. Assisted living. Places where people send their elderly parents away. They wanted to put me there. I whispered, "I am fully capable of taking care of myself." Sophia smiled sharply. "Of course you think so, but we have to be realistic. You live in a tiny apartment. You probably eat canned soup every night. You volunteer just to have somewhere to go during the day. It is honestly quite sad." She took a slow sip of wine, then delivered the final blow. "To be honest, you will die poor and alone. Would it not be better to have at least a little dignity in your final years?" Her words struck my heart like direct blows. Die poor and alone. Her smile remained unchanged, as if she were talking about the weather. I looked at Michael, waiting, hoping he would speak, that he would defend his mother, but he only stared at his plate, jaw tight, silent. I could not take it anymore. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling. "I am sorry," I whispered, picking up my handbag. "Where are you going?" Sophia called after me. But I did not answer. I walked through that restaurant on unsteady feet, past tables where real families loved each other, past couples holding hands under candlelight. The hostess smiled as I passed. She probably thought I was heading to the restroom, but I walked straight out into the cool Chicago night and kept going until I reached my car. My hands trembled as I searched for my keys. Behind me, the restaurant door opened. Footsteps on the pavement. "Mom, wait," Michael's voice. I turned back. A small spark of hope lit up inside me. Maybe he came to apologize. Maybe he would say Sophia went too far. But Michael only said, "You cannot just leave like that." Sophia feels really bad about what she said. I looked at my son, the man I had raised, the one I had sacrificed everything for, and I searched for the boy who once stood up for me against school bullies. "Does she really feel bad?" I asked softly. "Of course, she just wants to help. We both do." There it was. Even now, he chose his wife. He defended that cruelty. And in that moment, I realized painfully I had lost my son. Sophia had won completely. I spoke quietly. "Tell her not to worry about me. I will be fine." Then I got into my car, closed the door, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Michael and Sophia standing on the sidewalk, probably saying I had overreacted, that I was being unreasonable. When I got home, I sat down in Robert's old armchair, the chair he used to sit in every evening reading the newspaper. I held onto it tightly, and for the first time in many years, I cried until there were no tears left. Not because of humiliation, not because of heartbreak, but because I realized they saw me as a pitiful old woman, poor, dependent on their reluctant sympathy. But they were completely wrong. And that night, through my tears, something stronger, something firmer began to grow inside me. I would no longer let them define my life. That night, I sat alone in my small apartment, holding tightly onto Robert's old armchair. The streetlight from outside the Chicago window cast a dim, cold glow into the room. My tears kept falling, not because of Sophia's cruel words, but because of a deeper pain. I had lost my son. Michael, the child I raised on my own, was now only a shadow of a man I no longer recognized, always choosing to stand by his wife. I sat there for hours as memories returned like an old film. After Robert passed away, I carried everything alone. For long, endless years, I worked 2 jobs. During the day, I worked at an accounting office. At night, I took an extra shift at a small shop in the suburbs. I stayed up through the night to help Michael study so he could earn his prestigious law degree. I refused invitations to go out. I refused to buy things for myself. I saved every single dollar, and I invested, quietly, patiently. Since 1985, I bought my first Apple stocks when people still laughed and called them cheap technology. I bought properties in suburban areas of Chicago, places everyone said would never increase in value. I built a diverse investment portfolio. I went through every economic crisis, and over time it grew. I never told Michael about any of this. I wanted him to be proud of me, not because of money. Through my tears, I stood up, walked to the small table, and opened the drawer. My hands trembled as I took out the letter Robert had left for me before he passed away. The paper had slightly yellowed with time, but every word was still clear. "My dear Clara, you deserve more than you think. Never let anyone make you feel small. Live for yourself because you have already given so much. I am always proud of you." I read it again and again. My tears fell onto the page. Those words felt like a message from above, as if Robert were holding my hand, saying, "It is time, Lauren. Stand up." The next morning, as the sun rose over Chicago, I woke up with a different feeling. The tears were gone. In their place was a cold, steady strength I had not felt in years. I made a strong cup of black coffee just the way Robert liked it, then spread all my financial documents across the kitchen table. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property papers. I looked at the numbers, and for the first time in many years, I allowed myself to see my true worth. More than $2.2 million. 3 rental apartments in the suburbs, bringing in steady monthly income. A portfolio of stocks and bonds that had grown significantly. Everything Sophia believed I did not have. Everything Michael had never known. I sat there, my hands trembling slightly, but not from fear. I smiled. The first smile since that terrible evening. They thought I was poor. They thought I was a lonely old woman dependent on their pity. Fine. I would let them keep thinking that. I would not rush to reveal everything. I would let them show their true nature. I would continue living simply, wearing my old clothes, driving my old car, and I would watch what they would do when they believed I had nothing to give. I wanted to know, Would Michael still love his mother without the hope of inheritance? Would Sophia still pretend to care without a house to take? This was not revenge. This was truth. This was how I would take myself back. I folded Robert's letter, placed it in my pocket close to my heart, and whispered, "I will do it, my love. This time I will live the way you always hoped I would." And from that moment, my new journey began. A journey that no one, not even my own son, could ever have predicted. That was the moment I could not wait any longer. Right after I neatly put away my financial documents, I picked up my phone and dialed Elizabeth Harper, my personal lawyer who had been with me since Robert passed away. Her voice came through the line, warm and familiar. "Lauren, it has been a while. How are you?" I took a deep breath. My voice still trembled slightly, but a new determination had already begun to grow. "Elizabeth, I need to see you today. I want to change my will." She paused for a moment, then her tone became more serious. "I can arrange that within the next hour. But Lauren, before you decide, I need to be clear. This is a step you cannot take back. Once we sign and notarize it, it will be very difficult to change. I once had a client, a wonderful woman like you. She removed her son from her will because he and his wife kept manipulating her, forcing her to move, forcing her to sign documents. Later, when she passed away, that son fought in court for 2 years. He made her final years full of pain and loneliness. I do not want you to go through that." Elizabeth's warning felt like a sharp blade, but it was also the fire I needed. I answered clearly, "I understand, and I am ready." We met that same afternoon at her law office in downtown Naperville. I told her everything: the birthday dinner, Sophia's words that I would die poor and alone, Michael's silence. Elizabeth listened, nodded, then opened her laptop and began drafting. I removed Michael and Sophia completely from the list of beneficiaries. Everything I owned, more than $2.2 million, 3 rental apartments, my investment portfolio, and even the villa I would buy in the future would all be transferred to the Golden Years Foundation, the charity that Robert and I had supported for many years, a place that helps elderly people abandoned by their own children, people I almost became. And I added a special clause, a clear, undeniable codicil. If Michael or Sophia tried to challenge the will, they would automatically lose any right to visit any property belonging to the foundation, including my future home when it becomes a care center. They would never be allowed to step foot there again. When I signed the final documents, my hands trembled slightly, but my heart felt steady in a way I had not known before. Elizabeth looked at me, her eyes filled with respect. "You have just made one of the bravest decisions I have ever witnessed, Lauren. Not everyone has the courage to choose themselves." I left the law office feeling as if a huge weight had been lifted from me. On the way home, I stopped by my usual salon. Jenna, the hairstylist, looked surprised to see me. "Back so soon, Mrs. Smith," I smiled. "I want to change, Jenna. Make me who I truly am." 2 hours later, I walked out with my silver hair cut into a modern bob. Neat, youthful, full of life. I stopped by an elegant vintage store nearby and chose a few suits and dresses I once loved but had kept hidden for a long time. When I tried them on in front of the mirror, I saw a completely different woman, no longer a shrinking old lady in a rented apartment, but the real Lauren Smith, a woman who had quietly built an entire empire. When I returned home, Margaret Riley, my closest friend, stopped by with some homemade cookies. She looked at me from head to toe, her eyes wide. "My goodness, Lauren, you look like a queen. New hair, new clothes. You are glowing." I smiled and told her part of the story. Margaret held my hand, her voice warm but firm. "Do not let them take your light away again. You have sacrificed too much. Now it is time to live for yourself." I hugged Margaret tightly, feeling as if new strength had been given to me. That night I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at myself again. The woman in the mirror was no longer a victim of cruel words. She was confident, steady, and ready for whatever would come next. They wanted to play games with my life. Fine. But this time I would set the rules. And they were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. That was the moment I knew I had to act. The burning determination inside me would not allow me to sit still for even one more day. The next morning, I immediately called Rebecca Thompson, a real estate agent recommended by a friend. "Rebecca, I want to see homes that are truly worthy. No negotiations, no waiting. I want a place I can call home. Rebecca laughed over the phone. Lauren, I have the perfect property for you. Willow Creek Lane, Naperville. You are going to love it. We met just 2 days later. Rebecca drove me to Willow Creek Lane, a quiet street lined with lush green trees where elegant colonial houses stood behind white wooden fences. When the car stopped in front of the villa, my heart began to pound. The house sat on a 2-acre lot, with ancient oak trees casting cool shade. Classic colonial architecture. 6 spacious bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a modern kitchen bright and polished as if it had come straight from a home magazine. Through the large windows, I could see a garden that would bloom in spring, and in the distance a small lake with a gently curved wooden bridge. The asking price is $1.15 million, Rebecca said, her voice full of excitement. The previous owners are an older couple who just moved to Florida. Everything has been fully upgraded. This is truly a dream home. I stepped inside my hand, gliding gently over the marble countertop in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows, warm and soft. I imagined myself sitting in the library with a cup of coffee books all around me, no longer hearing words of judgment. This was not just a house. This was a statement. This was the place where I would finally live as my true self. But the tension came at that very moment. Rebecca received a call. Her face turned pale. Lauren, another investor, has just placed a deposit of $50,000 to hold the property. They want to negotiate the price and will sign this week. If you do not decide quickly. I looked straight into her eyes, my voice calm but firm. I do not need to negotiate. I will buy it now. Full cash. Today. Rebecca blinked in surprise. Full cash. Are you sure we could close in just 12 days? I am sure. Prepare the contract. Only 12 days later, I signed all the documents at the notary office. When Rebecca handed me the keys, she hugged me tightly. I have never seen anyone move this fast and this decisively. Congratulations, Lauren. This is your home. I stood alone in the grand entrance hall holding the keys, feeling a sense of power spread through my body. I had done it. This house was mine, not for anyone to take, not for anyone to judge. I waited until everything was completely settled before picking up my phone. It had been 3 weeks since that fateful birthday dinner. I dialed Michael's number. The phone rang twice. He answered. Mom, where have you been? You disappeared. We were waiting for you for Sunday dinner. Sophia was worried. I sat down in a new leather armchair in the library, looking out at the garden where workers were planting spring flowers. My voice was gentle but full of strength. I have been busy moving, my son. Moving? Where did you move? I bought a house, Michael. A real house. Silence filled the line, so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Michael spoke, his voice trembling, confused. You bought a house. What kind of house? A beautiful colonial villa on Willow Creek Lane, Naperville. 6 bedrooms. A large garden. Everything I ever wanted. I am very satisfied. Willow Creek Lane. His voice broke. Mom, houses there cost more than I thought you could. Where did you get the money? I could have told him everything at that moment. About my investments. About Robert's wisdom. About everything I had hidden for years. But I simply smiled and said gently, Your father was very wise with money, Michael. From the other end of the line, I could clearly hear Sophia's hurried whisper through the speaker. Is she lying? A house on Willow Creek Lane. That is impossible. She is poor. Michael tried to cover the phone, but I still heard it. My heart tightened for a moment, but I kept my voice calm. I chose to live simply, my son. There is a very big difference between having nothing and choosing not to show it. Michael swallowed. His voice became more formal, more distant. Yes, that is wonderful, Mom. We should come see it. You should. Saturday afternoon. When I ended the call, I sat quietly in my new home, looking out at the garden, slowly turning green. I knew exactly what conversation was happening in Michael's house right now. I could imagine Sophia pacing back and forth, her eyes shining with greed, while Michael tried to explain something he did not even understand. They were coming, and this time I was no longer the presentable old woman. I was Lauren Smith, the woman who had just bought a house with cash, the woman who had taken back full control of her life. And the real game had only just begun. That Saturday, the weather in Naperville was picture perfect. Red and golden autumn leaves fell gently in the garden. Soft sunlight filtered through the ancient oak trees. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of green grass and newly blooming daisies. I spent the whole morning preparing. I arranged fresh flowers from the garden into crystal vases. I set coffee and pastries on the antique wooden table in the living room. I did not want them to suspect anything. I wanted them to feel comfortable before everything changed forever. At exactly 2 in the afternoon, the familiar sound of a BMW engine echoed at the driveway. I looked out the window. Michael stepped out first, his shoulders slightly hunched. Sophia followed behind, wearing a fitted cream designer suit, the one she wore when she wanted to impress important people. She held her phone, her eyes scanning the house even before stepping inside. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. Michael. Sophia. Welcome to my home. Michael hugged me, but the hug was stiff and brief. Sophia smiled brightly, her eyes moving from the entrance to the living room. Oh, my Lauren, what a surprise. This house is quite impressive. Her voice was sweet, but I could hear the calculation behind every word. I led them inside. Sophia could not hide her excitement. She took out her phone, secretly taking photos of every corner, then even made a video call to her mother right in the living room. Mom, look at this. We are about to have a $1.2 million house. Look at the library. The children's room upstairs is full of sunlight. The backyard is huge, perfect for kids to play. I could hear her mother's excited voice through the speaker. Sophia grinned widely, talking while pulling out a measuring tape, measuring the walls, drawing a layout for a future children's room on her phone as if this house had already belonged to her for a long time. When we stepped into the master bedroom, a large space with French doors opening to a private balcony, Sophia could no longer hold back. She touched the silk curtains, her voice sweet, almost fake. This house is too big for you alone, Lauren. Too many stairs, too much maintenance, and it must feel lonely. We have already discussed it. We will move in here. You can keep the master bedroom. We will use the other rooms. We will take care of everything. Taxes, repairs, all of it. That way you will have company and you will not have to live alone anymore. I stood still looking at them. Michael added, trying to sound gentle. What do you think, Mom? It would be great for the whole family to be close. Our future children would have a big yard to play in and good schools nearby. Sophia continued, her eyes shining. Exactly. And you will have grandchildren to keep you company. Family should take care of each other. Those words hung in the air like a bold claim of ownership. They were not asking. They were announcing. They believed this house was already theirs. I smiled. A real smile. The first true smile I had shown them in years. You are right, Sophia. Family should take care of each other. I smoothed my dress, then turned toward my study. I just need to make a quick call. Please wait for me a moment. As I closed the study door, I could clearly hear Sophia's excited whisper outside. I told you, she agreed. We will move in before Christmas. I leaned against the door, my hand gripping my phone. Without hesitation, I dialed Elizabeth Harper. Elizabeth, I need you to come immediately. Use the back gate through the garden. It is urgent. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Harold Jenkins, my kind neighbor, 72 years old, stood outside with a bouquet of fresh roses from his garden. Hello, Mrs. Lauren. I saw you had guests, so I brought you some flowers. Your house is beautiful. He glanced through the window and accidentally saw Sophia measuring and drawing everywhere. He raised his eyebrows and whispered, That young lady, she is measuring your house as if she is about to move in. I gave Mr. Jenkins a faint smile, thanked him, and gently closed the door. He did not know that in just a few minutes everything would completely change. Elizabeth arrived quickly through the back gate. We sat in the study. She opened her laptop. What would you like to add, Lauren? I looked out into the garden, my voice steady. I want a clear clause. Under no circumstances will Michael and Sophia inherit this house. They will never live here, never own it. And if they challenge the will, they will lose all rights to visit any property belonging to the Golden Years Foundation in the future. Elizabeth nodded, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. This clause will be very strong. Are you sure? I looked outside where Sophia was still laughing, with Michael still dreaming about our new home. I answered, I have never been more certain. When Elizabeth finished drafting, I felt a new strength flow through me. They were standing out there believing they had already won, but I had just placed the final brick in the wall that would protect my life. They were about to learn a costly lesson. Never underestimate a mother who has decided to stand up. 3 days after I signed the new will, everything changed in a single moment. It was Tuesday morning, exactly 7 o'clock. I was sitting in my new kitchen, sipping my first cup of coffee of the day, watching sparrows gather at the feeder outside the window. The early sunlight shone through the glass, bringing the gentle warmth of an Illinois autumn. I felt peaceful, for the first time in a very long while. Then the doorbell rang rapidly, almost like pounding. I knew immediately who it was. When I opened the door, Sophia rushed in first, her face flushed red, her eyes blazing with anger. She was 3 months pregnant, her belly slightly visible beneath a thin coat. Michael followed behind, looking lost, dark circles under his eyes, his hair messy. No greetings, no politeness. Sophia pushed past me and shouted, "Get inside! We need to talk! Now!" I closed the door and led them into the living room. Sophia stood in the center, hands on her hips, her voice sharp. "What have you done?" Elizabeth Harper's office called Michael yesterday, talking about updated documents and property address confirmation. "They said we are no longer beneficiaries." "Have you lost your mind?" Michael stood still, staring at the floor, his fists clenched until they turned white. I sat down in my favorite armchair, my voice calm. "Sit down. I will make some coffee." "We do not need coffee." Sophia screamed, tears beginning to stream down her face. "You are trying to punish us. After everything we have done for you, we worried about you, we offered to take care of you, and this is how you repay us. This is elder abuse. This is undue influence. We will sue. We will take you to court. You will lose everything." I looked at her unshaken. I stood up, walked to my desk, and took out a folder I had prepared. Inside was a copy of the new will and a letter of explanation Elizabeth had helped me write. I handed it to Michael. "This is the truth. Read it." Michael opened the folder, his hands trembling. Sophia snatched it away, her eyes scanning page after page. Her face shifted from anger to shock, then exploded again. "All of it to the Golden Years Foundation. This house, too. You are giving everything to a charity instead of your only son. This is impossible." She grabbed the papers, trying to tear them apart. Michael quickly stopped her. Sophia calmed down. I looked straight into her eyes, my voice gentle but sharp. "You once said I would die poor and alone. You said it in front of my son, in front of his friends, and he said nothing. Now you cry, now you threaten to sue. Who do you think American law will protect? A mother called a burden by her daughter-in-law, or a daughter-in-law trying to take her property?" Sophia threw the papers onto the floor, screaming, "You are selfish. You are jealous. You cannot stand to see us happy. We need this house. I am 3 months pregnant. We were planning to tell you when we moved in to celebrate together. And now you are taking away your grandchild's future." I looked at her. Then I looked at her belly. A deep sadness rose inside me, not because I might never meet my grandchild, but because of the cruelty standing before me. I spoke one word softly. "Congratulations." Sophia froze. "That is it. You just say congratulations. No apology, no fixing this, no putting us back in the will." I sat down again, my voice steady. "I have nothing to apologize for. I gave my son everything. Love, sacrifice, opportunity. But love is not ownership. And I do not owe anyone this house." Michael finally spoke, his voice breaking. "Mom, please, we need this house. My job requires a proper place to live. And the baby. I do not want my child to grow up in a cramped apartment. Please reconsider." I looked at him. The child I once held. The child I stayed awake for through long nights of sickness. The child I was always proud of. Now he stood before me, eyes red, tears falling. My heart tightened. But I stayed firm. "Michael, I have thought about this. I have thought about it for 30 years. And I have decided I will not let anyone take away my dignity again." Sophia rushed forward, pointing at my face. "You will regret this. When you lie here alone, with no one to care for you, you will remember this moment and wish you had chosen differently." I looked at her, really looked, and I saw a small person consumed by money and status. I spoke quietly. "I will not die alone, Sophia. I will be surrounded by people who understand that family is not blood, but love and respect. And you have never given me that. They left in a storm of anger. Sophia stormed out the front door, her heels striking the floor with sharp, angry sounds. Michael picked up the scattered papers, his eyes red, then turned back for one last look at the doorway. "Mom, there must be a way." I looked at him, my voice sad but firm. "There is always a way, Michael, but you never truly tried." The door closed. The sound of the BMW engine started, then faded away. I stood in the entrance hall listening as silence returned to the house. I did not cry. I did not tremble. I only felt relief. Because for the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. And that was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter no one could rewrite for me. 6 months passed since the day Michael and Sophia left my house in anger. 6 months. A short time for the young, but for me it felt like a lifetime. And in those 6 months I found myself again. I lived a life I had never dared to dream of before. Every morning I woke up in my own spacious home. I made strong black coffee, then sat in the library with my favorite old books. I hosted a monthly book club with Margaret Riley and a few new friends. We sat around the fireplace, talking about novels, about life, and laughing until our stomachs hurt. I gardened with Harold Jenkins. He taught me how to care for rose bushes, how to trim them so they would bloom beautifully in spring. I started painting again. Landscapes seen from my bedroom window. Scenes of the garden slowly turning green. I volunteered more at the community center, teaching children to read, playing bingo with the elderly. But this time I did it for joy, not to fill an empty space. The house was no longer lonely. It became a real home, a place filled with laughter, a place where friends visited, a place where I belonged. Then one spring morning my phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. I took a deep breath, then answered. "Mom, hello." His voice was soft, trembling like the little boy he used to be when he made a mistake. "Can I see you? Just me?" I stayed silent for a moment. Then I said yes. This afternoon, he arrived exactly at 2, still driving the familiar BMW, but he looked different. His shoulders slumped, dark circles under his eyes, his hair longer. Gone was the confidence of a successful lawyer. He stood at the door holding a bouquet of roses, deep red roses from his own garden. "Mom?" He looked at me, his eyes red. I am sorry." I led him into the sunroom, the place where I once sat with Elizabeth to draft my new will. Now the room was filled with flowers and my paintings. We sat on wicker chairs. He lowered his head, his voice breaking. "Sophia left me. When she found out there was no inheritance, she changed completely. She said I disappointed her because I could not control you. And then she ended the pregnancy. She said she did not want to be tied to a man who could not give her the life she wanted. I lost everything, Mom. My job is still fine, but I lost my family. I lost everything." I listened. My heart tightened. Not because of Sophia, but because of the grandchild I would never meet. I looked at him. A 40-year-old man, the child I once held, the one I gave everything for, now crying like a little boy. "I am sorry, Mom, for not protecting you, for staying silent when Sophia said cruel things, for letting her treat you like a burden, for believing everything you had was meant for me. I was wrong, completely wrong." His tears fell onto the wooden floor. I did not speak immediately. I let him cry. Then I said, my voice gentle but firm, "I cannot forgive you right away, Michael. Not because I do not want to, but because trust takes time to rebuild. But I will open the door for you. You may visit me if you accept that this relationship must change. No more expecting me to exist for your convenience. No more assuming my love is guaranteed. No more taking without giving back. We will be 2 equal people." He looked up, his eyes still red, but now holding a small light of hope. "I understand. I will try. I just want to be with you." I stood up and led him into the garden. The rose bushes I planted with Mr. Jenkins were in full bloom. I handed him a small shovel. "Do you remember? When you were little, you used to help me plant trees. Let us do it again." Michael took the shovel, knelt beside the rose bush, dug the soil, placed a young plant, and covered it carefully. His movements were clumsy but sincere. For the first time in more than 20 years, we worked together in the garden. No need for many words, only birds singing, the sound of the shovel touching the soil, and the steady breathing of 2 people. When we finished, he stood up, his hands covered in dirt, and looked at me. "Thank you, Mom, for giving me a chance." I placed my hand on his shoulder and said softly, "This chance is not free, Michael. You must earn it. With actions, with respect, with real love." He nodded. Tears fell again, but this time they were tears of relief. When he left, I stood in the garden watching the roses sway gently in the wind. The money would still go to the Golden Years Foundation. The house would still become a refuge for abandoned elderly people. But perhaps, just perhaps, it would also become a place where a mother and her son learned to love again. Not out of duty, not out of expectation, but out of choice. That is what I dare to hope, and that is what I found the courage to demand. A love that must be earned, or nothing at all. In the end, I have both, and that is how my story ends. Not with a perfect Hollywood ending, but with a simple truth, real and full of hope. The money and the house, everything I built over so many years, will still belong to the Golden Years Foundation. When the day comes that I can no longer live on my own, this villa will become a warm shelter for elderly people abandoned by their own children. It will be clean bedrooms, morning coffee by the window, afternoons of card games and shared stories. The very things I once longed for but never received from my own family. I chose this path, and I am proud of it. But perhaps, just perhaps, this house will also become a place where my son and I learn to love again. Not out of duty, not for inheritance, not because of responsibility or guilt, but because we choose to. Because Michael now calls me just to ask how I am doing. Because he visits on weekends, bringing coffee, sitting with me for hours without mentioning money at all. Because we plant more rose bushes together in the garden, and for the first time in more than 20 years, he truly smiles when he sees his mother happy. Not every wound heals right away. There are still silent moments, still questions without answers, still old pain that sometimes returns in the quiet of the night. But we are trying, and for me, that alone is already a small miracle in a life that has known so much hurt. I look straight into the camera as if I'm speaking to each of you watching this video. If you were me, if your children or your loved ones ever made you feel like a burden, like a cost that needs to be managed, what would you do? Would you stay silent, swallow the pain just to keep family peace? Or would you dare to stand up to reclaim your dignity, even if it means facing a harsh truth? I am not here to judge. I only want to ask. And I want to hear your answer. Leave a comment below and tell me which city you are watching from busy New York, from sunny Los Angeles, from small towns in the Midwest, or from any corner of this country. I want to know how far this story has traveled and whether it has touched your heart. God bless you all. Courage always leads to better days. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If this story made you think, please share it. Because sometimes just one story is enough for someone to find the courage to change their life. I will see you again in the next stories. See you soon.